Welcome to In Studio from Simply Timeless. I'm Jay Daniels. We often share stories of musical journeys from talented jazz artists, and this week we bring you the story of pianist and composer Monika Herzig. Her latest album was with the Sheroes ensemble, and it's called Eternal Dance. Monika shares some of the inspirations behind the release, including their interpretation of a classic from Freddie Mercury and Queen. But we begin the conversation in Germany. That's where Monika first discovered her love of music and the arts.
Germany is rich of culture, I would say, and very supportive of culture. You know, something that I learned very much teaching here now in an arts management program where you look at how arts are supported, and that we are lucky in Germany with about 99% state support for the arts versus a 4% here.
Yes, and you're always having to fight for more in the education system.
Exactly. So there's a wealth of appreciation, and it's a built-in appreciation of the arts. And I think that's something I got along. We also had tons of jazz come in. I mean, it's been coming over since the beginning, and the thing about it is that it's always been an art form. So it's a big appreciation of arts and culture, and then jazz is viewed as an art form. So I remember hearing Take Five on the radio like all the time. And when I grew up, I always wanted to play piano, but we didn't have one. So I kept begging. So my parents made me play one of these melodicas, you know, those things where you have to blow it. Well, I mean, it's kind of fun for, you know, little fun melodies. But if that's your main instrument and all you have is like 1.5 octaves and you can't. So I really didn't like it, but I wanted my piano. So I stuck with it until I got it. Mm-hmm. And my lucky break was an invitation from my now husband, then the guitarist in the band there, who needed a keyboard player. And I really wanted to hang with the guys and do what I can. So they were deeply into fusion and Weather Report and John McLaughlin and Return to Forever and all that. And so that was my dive into it. And then I did 2 workshops next to Cologne. They're kind of similar like the Jamie Aebersold workshops where you go and you learn for 2 weeks. So those were fundamental too. So lots of good influences. And I also learned church organ. I have a church organ degree, so that gives you a little bit of the improv.
I was looking at your music behind you, the organ portfolio. Is that what I see?
You see that, okay.
Yes, I was curious if you did any work in churches. As soon as I saw that, I said, she's not just a pianist.
Well, yeah, and actually, you know, right now, it's really interesting because the services are canceled. So I'm putting together like all the hymns, and I'm using my Casio keyboards to play the organ intro.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah.
And so I record everything, and I have like the choir send me all their parts and then put it together. So the pastor puts together the video with all the music. It's a real new process.
Well, that's wonderful. And you mentioned that, you were given a melodica when you were younger. You waited patiently until you had a piano. Were you the only one in your family who took music seriously, or were there others who were also musically inclined in your family?
You know, my parents have war children. They got hit right when they were teenagers. That's when the 40s hit. And my dad actually got drafted when he was 16 the last year and was imprisoned in a camp in France. And my mom lost both her parents, and with her twin sister in Munich, you know, got bombed out. I mean, they're real war children. So they probably would have loved to do music, but they never had the luxury to dive into it. But my mom was an elementary school teacher and always encouraged. So she made all 4 of us take music lessons and learn an instrument, and they took it seriously and encouraged it.
Your your ensemble that you've recently put together is called Sheroes. And I do want to ask, speaking of mentors and influences, and this does not have to be necessarily musically related, but who were some of those influential women, besides your mother, who were some of the influential women in your life?
I mean, the reason why I put this ensemble together is because mentors and role models are such an important factor in what you pursue, and realizing that, you know, that was part of the idea of the concept. And, you know, for me, looking back, you know, it was really important to see some women who do what I want to do. So in I think it was the early 80s, I got to go to this jazz festival in Austria, and we camped, and there came Carla Bley with her big band, and she set up the organ, and she was directing the band and played the organ, and I thought she was the greatest thing that ever happened. So my mouth just dropped open seeing, you know, how she did that. And actually, I realized that when I got to the States, you know, I took a music composition class and I transcribed some of her music. And the teacher was like, "Who's Carla Bley?" And I was like, "You don't." So I realized that some of them are not as known as they should be, too. And then the other one, you know, Marion McPartland was another model just because of her story for me. You know, she had, when she got to the States and she started playing at the Hickory House with her trio, then Morgenstern wrote a review about her, and he said, you know, she sounds wonderful and great, but she has 3 strikes against her. It'll be very difficult for her to, you know, make a mark here in the scene because she's white and she's female and she's from somewhere else. So I thought, oh, yike. That sounds familiar. But I loved the way she, you know, just created an aura and a network and showed her place and her space. You know, this is who I am and this is what I can show. So she's one. And then on that new album, and we talked about it a little bit, there's a dedication to Jerry Allen. And she's another one who should be way more known. I mean, she was married to Wallace Rooney. They have the children together.
Yes.
And she comes from the Detroit scene, from Marcus Belgrave, is one of his disciples. She has played with everybody and led the Pittsburgh school jazz program for quite a while. And it's one of those quiet forces, beautiful compositions, amazing playing. And then you meet her and she's just this quiet little person. And another one of these people that, if she can do it, if they can do it, there's a space for us. We can do it.
That's what I keep reminding myself. It's like, if some of these people can do it, surely little me from Virginia can do it too. And I used to always hear stories about Ella Fitzgerald, one of the most outspoken vocalists out there. I mean, she was literally a member of the band. People very much respected her work, and yet she was introverted. She was very shy. I want to talk about your journey here to the States because, as you have mentioned, through several experiences, you were exposed to jazz, both through recordings and also live settings, quite extensively during your time in Europe. But then an opportunity came for you in 1988 through an exchange program to come here to the States. How did that come about?
Well, it was just when I finished my bachelor in Germany, and there was a relationship of the schools where they would have exchange students for a year. And I happened to get that program. And it was at a time when in Germany, actually, the opportunities for teachers were the all-time low. By now, they're back up. There was just an overflow of teachers for a minute. And I thought about it and thought, well, I mean, this could be the opportunity to go to the land where everybody must love jazz and play it all day long, right?
Yes, everybody, that's right.
That's what you think. So we bought one-way tickets, and the guy who invited me to the band and was then my boyfriend, so I schlepped him along, which was a good thing.
Yeah.
So we weren't alone on the journey, and then we just made sure we couldn't go back.
Yeah, you never left. And in fact, that program was through the University of Alabama. But you continued with your education after that. In fact, I should be calling you doctor during this interview, because you hold a doctorate in music education from Indiana University, and you also serve on their faculty there in art administration. Needless to say, you take this profession very seriously.
Yeah, well, I mean, one thing, the schooling is something, again, that my mom instilled being a teacher. I always loved taking classes, going to school. So just keeping going was natural. And plus, when you realize you need a green card and 4 more years to apply it, and a doctorate is a good thing to get in the meantime.
It's like, well, I've got time. I need an excuse. Why not, But life has been very fruitful for you as far as advancing your own compositions, your own arrangements, your own technique. In fact, you've written 2 books that are published in the world of jazz. But one of your, I would say, if I had to venture a guess, this is probably one of your most personally fulfilling ventures, the formation of Sheroes, which we hinted at that earlier in the interview. A group of women coming together to make music. Walk us through how this idea came to pass.
I mean, something that I mentioned earlier already is that realization of how important role models are, and over a long time performing. And it's interesting, especially if you often have bands where your husband is involved, and you see the dynamics on treatments and calm between the 2 people. There was a time in Alabama, we had our band, and we had a very young rhythm section, bass player and a drummer. They were probably freshmen. And for them, I was such a foreign concept. I talked weird. I came from somewhere else. I sometimes caught them talking to Peter, saying, does she want us to do this? And I'm going, hey, I'm right here. Hello.
Yeah. I do understand what you're saying.
So, I realized that it's difficult. There's a perception thing. And then, of course, every time you enter the stage, somebody's going to ask, oh, you're going to sing for us tonight. And I'm going, oh, I'm not sure you want me to do that, but so it's just a specific perception that we have of how jazz musicians look like, what we expect when somebody enters the stage. So about 6 years ago, I finally said, well, I want to create something new and something special. And how about bringing something together where we can start changing those perceptions? So bringing something on stage that's really, really great, amazing players, but I want to gather those like a Carla Bley, like Jerry Allen, that need to be seen and known more, do everything I can to put it together, make great music. And through that, have people realize, maybe what I think or what I perceive, I shouldn't. And the more you do it and the more great music that looks different you put on stage, little by little, the perceptions change and you don't have to worry about it anymore. So that was a main concept about it. And it's been great. I just pulled together all the great people I knew. I said, I just want the best. And everybody was, yes, I want to do this. And yes, you're right. And this is a great, great concept. And we developed this core by now. It's 5 to 6 of us that tours, which is Jamie Baum, the flutist, Rehud Regev, great, incredible trombonist from Israel. Lainey Stern has been with us for most of the time on the guitar. Jennifer Vincent on the bass, and Rosa Avila, who was with Andy Williams for 16 years down in Branson, and is one of the great Broadway drummers now too. So we have this core group and then lots of guests that has been touring over the last 6 years, and we've got our third album out now. And I can really see the growth and the change in perception wherever we go.
And I know from the recordings that I've heard from you and the ensemble, a lot of us musicians, and let's say us, because I can be one of them, when we put out a project, we fall into the trap of having each of the songs sound very similar to each other. And like me, I always fall into the trap of everything having a 1930s or 40s chord styling, very simplistic at the piano, and then I sing with it. I listened to your recordings, and these may not be what you would consider mainstream jazz. It does take a bit of understanding when it comes to listening. But each of these songs that have been recorded, whether they're an original or cover, I'm thinking especially of like Ain't No Mountain High Enough from Ashford and Simpson. Each of these songs have a distinct identity, not just because of who wrote them, but also because of the arrangement, the intentions behind them. It's not as though that you are simply looking to cover these songs. It's not as though you're saying, okay, well, this is our sound. This is what every song is going to sound like. When you approach a piece, whether it's an original or someone else's work, what is it that you want to go in to that performance, into that recording? What do you expect from the ensemble?
Well, one thing that attracted me to jazz is that you have this freedom of taking something and creating something new out of it. I think that was my main attraction, to have that opportunity to see, okay, there's a melody, it's a familiar melody. How can I embed it in this different environment so it becomes this really special new life? So I was always fascinated by that. And writing original music is also something that I did from the beginning, was one of the main things. Yes, of course, we have great songs and we interpret them, but what can I contribute that's new and different and special? There is already a Chick Corea and there is already a Bill Evans. I can sound like them, I can study them, but I don't have to recreate them. They can do it much better. But I need to find something that's special and that changes the landscape. So, that's another aspect of the band too, to not only have the look and the perception, but also, each one of these players has a unique sound and a unique voice that contributes to the landscape and changes the flavors and the colors that we have. So something that you hear on those recordings is that my treatments of songs, but also having their voices come in with their compositions. Something on the latest recording, when you get towards the end and suddenly Rayout's piece comes up in the sky and it's quite avant-garde, that's a very different voice. But it works because it's part of the ensemble and it showcases all these different voices.
And one voice that I especially appreciate, not to diminish the contributions of the other women, but one that I particularly enjoy because I don't hear it often, Jamie Baum on the flute. My friend Andrea Brockfeld, I think, would be very happy to hear such a prolific use of that instrument. And it really does provide a different voicing. It catches the ear when I hear it. After your release in 2018, I believe, you were in the midst of a tour that was coming up, a multitude of performances, and really trying to look ahead for what the next project was. And I want to focus on something that happened to you personally. You received a diagnosis from your doctor, and it wasn't the most pleasant of things. What did they tell you?
Well, it's actually more common than you think, and this is where we lost Jerry Allen too. So I had a breast cancer diagnosis, which, first when you hear it, you go in your little cocoon and think, oh, I have to go in hiding. I'll be out of commission for the next 2 years or so. And then you think about it and you realize, well, no, it's something you go through, but you're not decapacitated. You have treatments, you have to work on things, but it doesn't mean you have to go in hiding. You can still create. Your fingers are working fine, and and so I grappled with it, but I had to cut out a few things, but I kept creating music, and there was one tour scheduled in October, and we did the whole tour, and I'm really glad I did, because I think going through it helped and made me move ahead. And so a lot of the music that's on this new album came out of that period, and I think it shows too, this overcoming and this way of creating music to find a new sphere, to get into a new mindset. And unfortunately, this was also the period we lost some others. So one of the tunes on there is for Jerry Allen, using her birthday. We also lost my husband's brother to lung cancer last August. So actually Eternal Dance is dedicated to him. And then Up in the Sky is also to a loss that Reut dedicated to her little brother that she lost early. So there's a kind of loss and overcoming, but it gives it a bigger, deeper depth to the music, I think.
And the overcoming, I think, is represented by the very first track on the album. And it's one that I smiled when I heard it. From Freddie Mercury and Queen, We Are the Champions. Is that what you had in mind when you selected that song as the first track for Eternal Dance?
Well, I have to say that my manager, Susie Reynolds, had the idea of including that track. And first I thought, oh my gosh, there's no way you can make a jazz arrangement out of it.
Oh, yes, you can. And you did.
I did. I took the challenge, and for several reasons. A, it's just a great tune. And B, it really, really is a great anthem of empowerment. I actually use it when I teach my music industry classes. We always start talking about the ingredients of a good song at the beginning. And one thing we realize is that 70% of all songs are in high falsetto male voices. We seem to have a fascination with that as a society.
I mean, look at the Bee Gees. There's your perfect example right there.
All of them, Justin Timberlake. You look at every second song and the sing high guy. So what I do is, I'll usually take that song and I dim the lights and put the words on the projector and turn it up and say, just sing along as loud as you can and let it all out. And first they're a little shy, and then comes the chorus and we and they belt it out. And I said, did that feel good? And they realize, there's something to this act of singing at the top of the lungs and belting it out, and this empowerment, we are the champions, that is so much deeper than words, or you could say something, oh yeah, words feel good, but doing that. So that was another reason why I thought I have to tackle that song. It's just really special.
Absolutely. And what's interesting is, yes, we all know the song, but I think some of those attributes that you mentioned, some of those feelings, even with an instrumental without words, they still come through in the arrangement.
So I tried to really build an arc in that one, coming out just from this little piano ostinato that's kind of scared, to building it up and staying away from the usual, okay, we'll play the head and then solo and head again kind of format, but making it more an arc. So it starts, it builds, we'll introduce the melody, a little bit colorized, and then keep building the solos. The piano gets the first part, and then the guitar gets to belt it out over the We Are the Champion chorus, and just get supported with the melody at the end, and that's it. You're not going to go back and let's play another verse and another chorus kind of thing.
So this has been a season of change, and many of us are having to overcome stress anxieties, obstacles that, frankly, have taken many of us by surprise. You were expecting to be on the road performing. I know that you were expecting to be in the classroom teaching at IU. And a lot of that has either been postponed or you've had to find new avenues for your work. With regard to Sheroes, with regard to this album, Eternal Dance, how are you continuing to share the music even when you really can't leave your home?
So yeah, that's been really heartbreaking because we started the CD release tour in March. So we started on March 6th in Indiana. We had a great concert on the 7th at a theater here and presented Jazz Girls Day. And it was supposed to be a tour going till the 21st. And we headed out, little by little, scared messages were coming in, And by the time we hit Cleveland on the 12th, he was like, yeah, I'm keeping the club open, but, obviously there was only 5 people there by now because everybody was scared. And so by the time Sunday came, which was our concert at the Keystone Corner in Baltimore, we knew, okay, this was going to be the last one. The rest of them said, we'll have to close down. We can't do it. So it was heartbreaking. We said goodbye. They went to New York, bought a few rolls of toilet paper before they left to make sure they had enough. And I turned around and then it was just a steady avalanche of cancel, delayed, rescheduled. And, the university said, yeah, we're taking everything online. So, first, when you start this process, you're still in mode of, oh yeah, this is just temporary, after a while we'll just pick back up where we left and we'll have our daily concerts and the weekend gigs and all that. And the longer it takes, you realize this might not go back to where it was before. This is probably a whole different world where we come out of. And how we're going to do this, how are we going to find new avenues of communicating? So I just yesterday had the Vienna Jazz Festival canceled for July. That was one of the last things for the Sheroes to hang on. And now we're talking at the university even that the fall classes, some of them might go online. It's just keeps extending. So, we started, like many, play from our living room. We do Wednesdays and Saturdays. I go and put makeup on and dress up and walk over to the piano and we'll turn on and make it feel like, we're going to a performance and it's working. We're talking to the people. They tune in and they listen and they interact and you have the comments and you somehow simulate that situation. We started doing some videos. There's a hospital that contacted me, said, we're going to provide music for the patients and can you create some videos? So that's a little different avenue from before where you do that with the sister city. Indianapolis and Cologne are sister cities. And we usually put on a concert for them in the summer. So now we'll record some tunes here. Some of their musicians will record there and then they'll broadcast it together. So there's different measures, new measures, but the income stream is difficult because you can't monetize this yet like you do at a concert where you have a set fee. You get paid. This is a usual fee. But for a lot of these online streams, you ask for tips, but there's not a usual ticket fee that people are accustomed to, Even Chicoria every day goes live for free. So the monetizing thing is a little tricky. My whole summer just went away. I was going to take an overseas class to Berlin. We had all these concerts. So now I have, several months of nothing, no income. And it's tricky. what are you going to do? You just have to, especially with the future where you don't know how it's going to end up. If we could know exactly we're working towards, let's just reschedule everything by October 30th, we'll make our calendar full, we'll contact the venue, then that would be pretty straightforward. We know that process. But can you really do that? Will people come back to concerts? Will we have the same atmosphere? How will venues change? We don't know. We have to see.
I think that's the most scary part, Monika, is that there is so much unknown. I think when this first took place, and I was going into New York about every day for meetings, for interviews, for performances at the senior centers, whatever. And there was, when this first happened, we said, okay, we might shut down for 2 weeks, maybe a month. And that ought to, temper things a bit. And then we'll be able to, go back to where we were. And now we're in the middle of it. We're at a so-called plateau in numbers. They're starting to go down slowly. But then we wonder, well, how long does this take? And can we go back to normal without being back at square one again? There are so many questions. And I think as I come to my final point, there are so many uncertainties. There are so many unknowns. But the one thing that remains constant for people like you, for other artists, for listeners, and also for me, the one constant that remains present in all of this is our music. So, through all of these years, from performances to moving from Germany to the States, it's all been because of music. So I ask you, Monika Herzig, why music?
Music, it's a way of communicating for us. I think that goes way beyond words. There's so much more we can say. In a word, you say, I like this or I like that, but putting that into a musical conversation, you reach different senses, not just the verbal sense, but everything else. And I think that's my fascinating part, that you have a way of communicating that's way beyond the 20% that words can do. Mm-hmm. And if you look back at history, music has always been part of any society at any time. So it is a very essential part for us to communicate. It will never go away. And, I think if I can continue doing that and create the music, I'm not sure what the purpose would be. This is the thing to hang on to and find ways of getting together and communicating ideas, emotions, feelings, and being as human as we can be.
Monika Herzig, our guest this week during In Studio from Simply Timeless. The album is called Eternal Dance, and you can find out more at her website, monikaherzig.com. Monika is spelled with a K. Until we meet again, I'm Jay Daniels, thanking you for joining us in studio.